Today, Tom Lee is going to drop a bunch of bombshells for people who own XRP. The rest of the crypto market was doing a deep look into the current state of all the financial markets and how this is going to play out and affect all of our crypto holdings. That being said, let's pay close attention to what Tom Lee says next. I think the market has been thinking about the bad things that could happen. They've been talking about the chance of a slowdown or a trade war with China that ends in disaster for the economy. That's why buyers only look at what could go wrong. On the other hand, the US has a lot to gain from changing its tax policy, deregulating its economy, and increasing exports, incentives to get people to invest in the US. And all of that would not only raise PE, but also raise profit. I think you shouldn't be too specific because in the end, you don't have to be right. If investors have raised money, there is $7 trillion, 0 cents in cash on hand, and investors are consistently negative. There must be something wrong with the market. Now, what Tom Lee is saying here really hits home for me because it's such a strong and important message, right? In my experience, one of the best times to get active is when the news is full of scary stories. There have been days when I've bought cryptocurrencies and days when I sold them. The days when I've bought cryptocurrencies were some of the biggest red days. I have a general rule. There is a chance that one of the top 10 cryptocurrencies will drop more than 10% in a single day. It doesn't matter what I buy on that day, I buy in heavy. On the other hand, I might take some gains if that cryptocurrency goes up more than 15% to 20% during the bull cycle. This is especially true when trading futures. To be honest, I believe that keeping XRP and H-bar for a long time is the best way to go. But yeah, this point really hits home for me. However, Tom Lee talks about a lot of other things in this video that I think will also be very useful to you. Okay, so let's take it apart. Let's talk about that. And then I'll give you some more really important background information that you need to think about. Pay close attention. I think I'll start by saying that the US economy is always in a slump somewhere. I'd say that about 20% of the US economy has been in a slump in the last 5 years. That's why it's called a rolling slump. Also, the trade war is likely making more rolling recessions happen. While some parts of the economy are in recession, GDP may only grow slowly. This does not mean that the economy as a whole is in a recession. Let me show you what I mean. Since 1900, every time property was in a recession, the economy as a whole was also in a recession. This current recession has been going on for 3 years, but the US economy has been fine for 3 years while the home market has been down. I think we're all trying to figure out if a trade war recession, where trade slows down, is enough to cause the economy as a whole to go into a recession, since we know it's causing a drop in trade. And I don't know how to answer that. However, I'm only interested in the high-yield market. If the high-yield spread, which is the difference between high-yield rates and risk-free rates, gets to 1,000 basis points, a recession is almost certain to happen. But it's at 367 basis points right now. For me, the high-yield market means that there is not a US recession, but rather another rolling slowdown, which is why I asked you to explain. Some people might think that because GM is having a hard time, the market is also having a hard time. There's a good chance that GM going bankrupt wouldn't hurt the US economy, but we don't want too many parts of the economy to go into a recession because that would make the whole economy go into one. That is, you want to know why, if there is a rolling recession, it doesn't make the whole world go into a recession at the same time. And at some time, yes, that seems like it could work, but in the past, it took what you might call a shock. For example, if the price of oil goes up to $300, 0 cents a barrel, 15% of all money spent in the US would go to oil. That's a surprise since it's $50, 0 cents now, but the price of oil needs to rise a lot. But that has led to recessions in the past. For the second kind of recession, there is a shock to the banking system. The year 2008? In other words, if there is a problem with the banks or loans, the whole economy goes into a recession. But it doesn't make enough of a difference when industry or housing are in a recession. Remember that when the area banks were having trouble in 2023, a lot of people thought there would be a downturn because they thought the regional banks would be the wall, and if they failed, all credit would fail. Of course, there was a problem at a regional bank, and the economy was fine. That being said, we've been in a run of rolling recessions since 2022. That's 3 years now. And the S&P was down 27% in 2022. Earnings didn't start to rise again until the second half of 2023. When that happened, investors said the market would go down even more because they thought the Fed's tightening would cause the economy to fall even more. We had made a strong case against that, said that customers didn't have enough credit or debt to stop a bigger recession. Things are still the same today. Both businesses and individuals don't have a lot of debt. That's why there's a chance that people will lose their jobs, a recession. That being said, I don't think anyone is so sure that we're going to have a slump. Also, that's what you're hearing. A lot of experts seem to be calling for a recession. I've been a person for 30 years and have never seen an economist get the slump right. Most likely the fact that many people are saying there is a recession tells me that there isn't one. I get it. There is a recession going on right now, even though experts say there. Yes, that's what took place in 2008. To me, Tom Lee's view on recessions is so very different from everyone else's, and I think his point about the rolling recession is very important for you guys to understand. Understanding of economic cycles and how they work. Now, since most developed countries' economies are not based on a single industry, like the US economy might have been 50 years ago when oil was the main source of income, software, virtual services, AI, cryptocurrencies, and a huge number of multinational businesses that aren't tied to any one trade or field are things that we now have. And it's possible that there will be a big supply shock if oil prices go up to $300 per barrel, but that's looking less and less likely as countries grow and do more different kinds of business. These days, a lot of business can't be taxed because the goods aren't real. One example is software. So yes, tariffs do have an effect on physical things that we all use and need every day. But there's a lot more than that. Yeah, I agree with what Tom Lee said. Some businesses do go through recessions while others don't. And just because one business is in a recession doesn't mean the whole US economy will too. It was going through a terrible recession, just like steel and industry in 2020 and 2021. There was a decline in a lot of different trade jobs because of that. Tom Lee doesn't think the economy will slow down anytime soon, but the economy as a whole has been going strong. Is Tom Lee a trustworthy person? He was the one asking for higher highs when Bitcoin was worth less than $80,000, 0 cents. A lot of people also said the bull run was over. Someone else also said, listen, I think now is a great time to buy XRP. At that time, when XRP was selling for less than $2, 0 cents, I bought a lot of it, and now we're here. However, it's still likely that the crypto markets will experience short-term price changes and crazy instability. But if we see good chances, the price of XRP could drop by a huge amount in a very short amount of time. Based on this information about how the market really works, I'm going to be buying a lot, and I think you guys should too. I'm really interested in what you guys think about this movie with Tom Lee. What do you think about his idea of a rolling slump and the world economy getting bigger and better?